Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Wanted to talk today about existing after the doo-doo hits the fan, and how we blend in and how we don't draw attention to ourselves. It's kind of like being a gray man now, but probably even more so now. If you get exposed now for being some kind of patriot or prepper or something, someone could try to come and steal things from you. Um, you may lose your job, or you may have friends that no longer are friends with you. But when it all hits the fan, it's different. It could be potentially be that if you get exposed for what you are or what you believe, it could mean your life, your family's life. It could mean your possessions, your property. We don't know how bad it could get. And because of that, we want to be sure that our operational security and our gray man tactics are at the best game possible. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that today. I do want to apologize if I don't seem like I have my A game on. It's because I don't. uh, Yesterday, out of nowhere, I was feeling so good the day before, and all of a sudden I woke up and was just about as sick as I've ever been with some type of intestinal bug virus, I guess. It's hit me hard, and I'm not completely over it, but obviously I can get out of bed. But I'm telling you, I'm still struggling with just the fatigue of it. So I apologize for not putting out the very best content that I can right now. I'm struggling just to put out any kind of content. Anyways, so I was thinking about this, and we have the real possibility of things turning into a very big dystopic nightmare. And I don't mean necessarily a Mad Max kind of scenario, where it's just desolate and, the nukes have gone off and there's nothing left except a few little bands of marauders and cannibals and, all this kind of stuff. I feel it's most likely going to be a scenario where the globalists have used their technology, their AI, their all of that to completely take over, and most of the known world is under their rule, and you can't buy anything or sell anything, much like the Bible says, without their digital currency. You can't go anywhere without their digital identification, or the thing that goes here, or anything like that. We've seen just in the last 3 years or so little bits and pieces to indicate that that's kind of where we're going, right? I mean, it's become obvious now. You don't even have to kind of read between the lines to figure that out. It's becoming quite obvious. And so we could easily end up in a scenario where the world is basically made up of these 15-minute smart cities, which is exactly what they say they want, and they're currently building some. In some cities, they're converting to that as we speak. Everyone lives in their little pods. You don't own anything. Your usage of energy is very limited. You're eating synthetic food and bugs because that's exactly what they're pushing now. In fact, it was announced, I think, today or yesterday that the FDA and the USDA have approved synthetic chicken. It's going to be in restaurants before you know it, they say. And it's been given the final approval for human consumption. So there we have lab-created synthetic chicken meat that's going to be served. You're not going to be able to travel where you want. Large swaths of the country are going to be, cordoned off because it's for environmental reasons and all that kind of stuff. And for those of us, much like Klaus Schwab had said back in 2016, that choose to not be part of that system, we will be out in the barren wastelands kind of surviving on our own. And if that is the scenario that we face, which it lines up pretty good with a lot of the stuff in the Bible. I'm no theologian, but a lot of the end-time prophecies sound like that could fit in that scenario. I don't know. But this is what they talk about. This is that Yuval Harari, the guy with the World Economic Forum, and Klaus Schwab, and many others have made a lot of these statements to indicate that's where they want us to go. That's what they're wanting us to do. All the British royals, and they're all wanting to do it, right? And so this is crazy and outlandish as it seems to think that that's what the world that we have to live in the future. I think it's smart to start preparing for that. And that's why I advocate, many others do also, but I advocate, finding a place out and away from these cities and being as self-sufficient as possible, finding others that live and think and believe like you, and building a community with them. And it does, when I say building a community, it doesn't have to be a literal community, like all on the same property kind of community. I mean, it could be, if that's how it works out for you. It doesn't have to be. But a community can also be that there are just people in your area, in your region, that you work with, that you communicate with, that you rely on, and they rely on you. That's a community also. And so trying to develop that and develop a system that can prevent you from relying on these mega smart cities that are being developed and converted into is going to be one of the better things that prevent you from having to bow down and accept their stuff. Now, what if you have to go into those kind of places? What if you have to venture into them because you need medicine or something like that? It's going to be difficult. You're going to want to be as gray man as you possibly can. You want to blend in. You probably want to have 2 or 3 people that travel with you, and at least 1 or 2 of them wait outside. Find some type of, area just outside of town that you can kind of have some visuals, at least a little bit. Now, if it's a big city, you may not work out that way, but some kind of forward operating post or something that you can, some little observation area. That would be probably a good idea. Going in and just trying not to draw attention to yourself. Don't walk around with your head up high. Just try to blend in with what everyone else looks like. That's kind of the world that we're going to eventually face, I think. If not in my lifetime, I believe certainly in our children or grandchildren's lifetime. I think this is the way it's headed, even if we aren't in a end times biblical time period. If you just look at the way civilizations and empires rise and fall, they go through a period as they fall of almost like everything gets set back for a while, and then they kind of have to start over again. And I think that's what we're going to see happen here. We're going to watch things collapse for a while, and the elite will continue progressing forward. They will continue getting wealthier and wealthier. We've already seen that over the last few years. And the poor people will get a little bit poorer and will have less and less. There'll be a less technology. It's almost like we've reverted back in history. And till things kind of stabilize and their diabolical globalist plans kind of really take hold, and then everyone starts to kind of move forward in technology and wealth and all that kind of stuff. At least that's their plan. We're going to be outside of that. We're not part of that plan. We're not part of their system. We're not part of their medicines. We're not part of their electricity and their utilities and their supplies and their water and their food. We're not part of that. And one of the reasons we're not part of it is because we choose to not be part of it. And I don't want their water and their food and everything, because at some point their water and their food and everything else is going to be so contaminated with all the lab created stuff that I can't mention on here, that I don't care how bad I need it, I don't want it. It's not something that I could consume anyways. I could willingly consume, consciously consume. So I don't want it anyways. So we have to learn to work outside of that. You're going to have to get your head wrapped around the fact that you're probably just going to be not just an outcast, but a criminal. And that a life of much like you've probably seen in some dystopic movies, where you're going to have to resort to certain crimes, breaking into stores to get bandages and stuff. That may actually have to happen. It's probably not what you want to happen, but it may have to happen to survive. Finding ourselves in this kind of reality that I'm speaking of is, some of you may think it's cool. Some of you have planned for it for years, and that's where you're ready for it. You're ready for it yesterday. And others are probably thinking, man, you're really getting into the doomsday, doom and gloom stuff here lately, and this is just too much. My ears can't bear to hear this stuff. I don't think this is necessary to talk quite like this right now. I mean, we've still got another election we might be able to take care of and win. And we have, these congressmen and senators that we might be able to overturn certain things and turn things around. You're talking about this dystopic nightmare like it's some kind of movie. Well, I'm talking about it because my opinion is that's the direction we're headed. And it doesn't matter who gets elected into office, and it doesn't matter what bills get passed. That's the direction that we're headed. We're headed for a very doomsday scenario. It's right in the Bible. There are many analysts. There are many experts that all are pointing that direction. Now, the big question is the timeline. Some think it's going to be months away. Some think it's going to be years, and others it's decades away. But the destination is not in doubt by so many people. It's really just the time that it takes us to get there. And if that's the destination, don't we owe it to ourselves and our families and stuff to really prepare for that kind of destination? Not just a destination where, I have to live off of my garden for a season until things kind of get back together. If we hit this rock bottom, the old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. There is a lot of truth in that. And if America actually falls that hard to the bottom, it's going to take so much longer for America to pick up and to get back on her feet. Not to mention that if America falls and hits rock bottom, you're going to have, even if none of these other entities on these other governments or on the planet have anything to do with it, there's going to be a lot of forces against America to keep them down, to destroy it, to break up and to take what they can. This is just a very likely scenario that we could face. Doesn't mean that we will, but it is, I think, becoming more and more likely. And I think we have to prepare for that. We have to explore this. We have to think about how we're going to react and interact in a world like that. Do we just cut ourselves off from the rest of the world and say we're not going into town, we're not letting people on the property, we're not leaving the property, and if we starve to death here, then oh well, we're just not going anywhere? Or do we have plans for interacting and engaging in trade, maybe gray market trade, maybe black market trade? Do we do that? Do we have one designated person in the group that has all their legal things that they need to have to go do business, and they're the representative? They go into town, and because they can legally purchase with the currency and with the identification and everything. What do we do? I mean, if you do that, that can work until that person gets caught, and then they jeopardize the whole community. If you do nothing, and just completely close yourself off, you risk completely starving to death or dying of some disease that you don't have medicines for. If you engage in just black market and gray market trading, well, then you risk getting caught too, because they're going to be monitoring that. We have to think along these lines, and I see so many times that when these kind of conversations come up, whether they're in the comment sections or whether they're in someone's video they produced or something else, there's always these naysayers. There's always these people like, oh my goodness, you sound so doomsday, this fear porn that you're pushing and all this kind of stuff, not just to me, but to other people. And while there certainly are people that do that, push those kind of things just for the clicks, just so that they can, build up their name or make some money, I think it's only smart for us to have these conversations, because the likelihood of us seeing this kind of world that I speak of is becoming greater and greater likely, more and more likely. And even if what I'm talking of is the most extreme scenario, even if it's something less extreme than what I'm talking about, that's still really bad. And we still really need to be prepared for that. So we should have these conversations. When you're working with your tribe, with your community, you should have these kind of conversations. What are our plans for venturing out into the world if we need supplies? What are our plans in working with other people that aren't part of our community, that aren't within our tribe? If there's a mechanic or a welder down the road, he's not part of your tribe. How does your tribe interact with him? What are the parameters? Do you just act like everything's normal? Or do you have a plan to go in and try to safely interact with him? And then also cover your backside, because you never know when you're being monitored. You never know when you might get ratted out or exposed. These kind of scenarios need to be talked about, folks, because, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but the way things are going, we could certainly see ourselves in this scenario. I think a lot of people think that it's either going to be normal, everything's going to be kind of the same as always, or it's going to be this rule without law. All government's going to collapse, and then it doesn't matter because it's just every man for himself. I think it's going to be something very much in between, where there is government. In fact, there's a lot of government, and it's using technology that we aren't even aware of yet that's controlling us and monitoring us. And then you're going to have these little pockets of people outside that they're now considered criminals just simply because they don't want to comply with this dystopic Big Brother 1984 system. And so it's going to be both worlds, where, you have almost no law out here, and you have more law than you can shake a stick at over here. And you're trying to interact with them as much as possible and not get caught and not get drawn in to their Big Brother world. I could be wrong, and in a lot of ways I hope that I'm wrong, but I think we have a duty to ourselves and our families and our communities to start thinking about this kind of stuff and having these conversations. Because if we truly want to survive what's coming, we need to be prepared for just about any scenario. And again, the way things are transpiring, how they're going, this scenario that I speak of is certainly becoming more and more likely. Folks, it's time to get your houses in order and to prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.